fall of 1535, Jacques Cartier sailed the St. Lawrence River. The navigator is amazed by the landscape. He decides to plant a cross at the mouth of the St. Maurice River. Later, this land became the property of the Nouvelle France Company, who later gave it to Abbé de la Ferté. The Jesuits chose this place in order to establish a mission. These events have taken place more than 350 years ago. Today, on this soil, many of the inhabitants of this country come to pray the Virgin Mary, the Mother of the Savior. In regard with the history, we must turn to 1888. Father Luc Desilets was then the pastor of St. Madeleine's parish. This year is an important one because the small parish church built in 1714 becomes a shrine dedicated to Our Lady of the Rosary. Ever since that time, pilgrims head for this shrine of prayer and peace. The very first church was built in 1659. It was a very small church made of wood. It had been given by Sir Pierre Boucher. Father Paul Vachon became its first pastor, named by Monseigneur de Laval around 1685. The priest is the instigator of the devotion to Mary at Cap de la Madeleine. In 1694, he founds the Brotherhood of Holy Rosary. The 13th of May, 1714, Monsignor de Saint-Vallier gives permission to build a second parish church. The first one is already too small. This second church is still in place, and the pilgrims come to honor the Virgin of the Rosary. It is considered the oldest church in Canada preserved in its integrity. After Father Vachon's death in 1729, the parish of Cap de la Madeleine remains without a pastor until 1844. At this time, the inhabitants of the village are very poor. The archives report that the parishioners had obtained permission to leave the sanctuary lamp extinguished because the parish had no more money to pay for oil. Father Luc Desilets becomes the parish priest in 1864. His great devotion to the Virgin Mary slowly moves the parish towards a new vocation. Soon after arriving, Father Desilets is faced with a general state of abandon by the parochial community. Barely a dozen people are present at Sunday Mass. In 1867, on the eve of the Ascension, Father Desilets has an astonishing experience. He is leaving the sacristy, depressed because nobody was there for confession. Passing in front of the church, he sees a small pig inside. In its mouth, a rosary. Immediately, he is struck by this thought: people have abandoned the rosary, so it goes to the pigs. So on the 5th of November, he takes the solemn vow to work with all his strength to spread the devotion to the rosary. Gradually, the parish church built in 1714 becomes too small. The construction of a new church is required. So the church council decides to demolish the small chapel and to buy for the new construction the necessary stones found on the south shore of the St. Lawrence River. The decision is taken to wait for the arrival of winter and ice in order to transport the stones across the frozen river. However, the winter of 1879 is particularly mild. Usually, in mid-December, the river is frozen over. But this year, the river is completely free of ice. Considering this situation, Father Desilets decides to invite the parishioners to pray for the ice to form on the river. Moreover, he promises that the small chapel will remain and will be dedicated to Our Lady of the Rosary if the Virgin obtains an ice bridge across the river. After Sunday Mass, the people are invited to pray the Rosary. January and February pass. At the beginning of March, still no ice. Finally, on the 14th of March, a violent wind breaks the ice of Lake Saint-Pierre, great slabs of which float down to Cap de la Madeleine. There, they stop and the ice bridge takes form. During 1 week, from the 19th to the 26th of March, the inhabitants are able to carry the necessary stones in order to build the new parish church. Following the prodigious event, the ice bridge is called the Rosary Bridge because it was obtained by reciting the Rosary. The small chapel was not demolished. A new parish church was built, but later demolished to make place for the new basilica. As promised in 1879, Father Désilets wants to dedicate the small chapel to Our Lady of the Rosary. He waits for a sign. He recognizes it when he meets Father Frederick Janson, a Franciscan. Father Frederick, familiar with organizing pilgrimages to the Holy Land, responds positively to the priest's invitation. As soon as he returns from Jerusalem in 1888, he decides to collaborate in the founding of the shrine at Cap de la Madeleine. So, on the 22nd of June of the same year, the small parish church built in 1714 is officially dedicated to Our Lady of the Rosary. Father Frederick gave the homily. He was very enthusiastic. He predicted that one day this chapel would be too small because pilgrims would come in great numbers to pray. The same evening, Father Désilets, Father Frederick, and Mr. Pierre Lacroix, a handicapped person, were inside the small chapel praying to the Virgin. After a moment of prayer, they noticed that the eyes of the statue were no longer lowered, but looking directly ahead. This look was that of a living person. This extraordinary event lasted from 5 to 10 minutes. Father Frederick was deeply touched by this event. Later, he will say that the Virgin's glance has changed his life. The new shrine soon faces an unfortunate event. Father Désilets dies 2 months after the inauguration of the shrine, precisely on the 30th of August, 1888. Father Frederick is now alone to pursue the new task. He will have the support of Father Duguay, the new parish priest. The pilgrimages know a rapid expansion thanks to the untiring efforts and the zeal of Father Frederick. In 1892, he founds the Shrine magazine. However, despite their efforts, Fathers Frederick and Duguay realize they need some help. They hope that others will take one part of the work. The Bishop of Trois-Rivieres, François-Xavier Cloutier, asks for help from the Oblates of Mary Immaculate, who answer positively to his request. We must pay homage to Father Frederick, who traveled from parish to parish in order to make the shrine known. His life was marked since the miracle of the eyes. His reputation as a man of God has not ceased to grow daily among the people. For this reason, he has been beatified by Pope John Paul II in 1988. As soon as they arrive, the Oblates work towards the development of the pilgrimages. New landscaping is done, and new monuments replace Father Frederick's Way of the Cross. In 1904, Pope Pius X confers to the statue of the Virgin the honor of a coronation. This is a privilege granted only to a few statues of the Virgin. According to the tradition of the Catholic Church, 3 conditions are necessary: anciency of worship, miraculous favors granted by her intercession, and the affluence of pilgrims.